Hi, my name is Mark Stallard. Welcome to Little Green Man. This is part 5 of our Balance the Budget Doctrine series. Why balance the budgets and austerity? Well, we discovered in the previous videos, and if you haven't seen them, check them out, please. I strongly recommend that. There is no good reason for balancing the budget and for austerity. The neoliberal agenda is really, and it boils down to this, it's corporatization. The end result of austerity is to privatize public services and even destroy public services so corporations can control, run and profit by them. Now, privatization, you may think, good, that'll be the end of taxes, but it actually doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all. If you were to say to the public service that we're going to leave it open, anybody can do it, then all's well and good. Maybe there'd be a bit of a free market happening. But what really happens, and what Brian Pallister here in Manitoba is doing, is something called P3. P3, so there as private-public partnerships, mixing public money and private money. That means taxpayers' money with corporation money, so that corporations and companies and the rich people that own them can get profit from running these public services, particularly with schools. There's a link somewhere up there. I did a video on this fairly recently. Check that one out. There are many problems. Now, Brian Pallister has also pushing for privatization of healthcare. And one of the things he suggested, I don't know if he'll follow through with it, is a healthcare premium. So your taxes are actually going up, even though there was a promise, maybe an empty promise of the PST going down. So that's good, that's all well and good then. But will privatization then come to the rescue? Will it make everything better? Because who cares if we're paying taxes if we get the services we need? Who cares who gets that money? Well, will privatization come to the rescue? Well, it hasn't happened for almost 40 years that the United Kingdom and Europe has been doing this. And it's certainly, if we look at one of the most privatized nations in the world, the United States, talking of democratic nations, if we can call it that, they certainly call themselves that, then we can see that privatization leaves the working people with no health care at all, unless they just happen to work for a company that has a healthcare plan, leaving it in the hands of the employer. And many people, about 20%, I think it was, certainly before the Affordable Care Act, there was about 20% of people that did not have any healthcare at all in the US. So privatization really does not work. The UK has demonstrated just very recently, there's news of the privatized rail service that's been going for like 20 odd years, I think it is. Has been privatized, is falling apart, it's a shambles. That now that's failing, and we've got the Labour Party leader is saying that needs to now be brought back into the public sector because it is failing. Now, the downside of all this austerity as well is the political ramifications. People are hurting and they're lashing out. In the UK, Brexit, they wanted to leave Europe. Whether that was the good reason or not is irrelevant. That was the reason, that was what they elected to do. They've got to try something different, and the same as in the US, they had to try something different. Would not go with a regular politician, they went with someone who wasn't a politician. Donald Trump, whether he was a good choice or not, we will find out soon enough, I guess. And again, I mentioned this in my last video, that France almost elected a fascist. They just scraped through by the skin of their teeth for not doing it after less than 100 years, about 80 odd years, I think it is right, since they were occupied by those fascist Nazis in the Second World War. So private companies have a proven disadvantage. That's something that they cannot do, that they have to do, rather, that the public sector does not have to do. And that is make a profit. So, if they have income of revenue rather of $1, then they've got to take that 10 cents off the top, and then they have 90 cents to spend on giving you a good service. The public sector does not have to do that. They can even run at a loss at times. Now, there is an issue. Well, private companies are better at cutting the red tape of not having so much bureaucracy. They can just get things done. But that's not true either. Every company that does not have a charismatic leader, every organization, whether it's a company or a church or any organization that has a charismatic leader that built it up, has to departmentalize and has to build its own bureaucracy, or it will fall apart. This is why the Catholic Church is the longest running and probably most stable organization out there, and it's been going for what, not quite 2,000 years, 1,700 odd years, give or take. But that's because it is the world's largest bureaucracy as well. So private companies they have the same level, give or take, above the level of bureaucracy that the governments have. They may be a little bit different, and it might be easier for companies to cut the red tape, but sometimes that red tape, when it's cut, particularly when it's cut carelessly, if in fact it is red tape at all, can end up being harmful to human beings, with companies releasing products that are unsafe, where people can die, particularly regarding, I think it was Chekhov from the new Star Trek movies comes to mind. People are being addicted also, to change the subject slightly, to opium now, with these legal drugs that are on the market now that you can get with a prescription. That is more addictive than heroin, I hear. So we still have these bureaucracies that are going to be in place. So that's not really going to change. The only thing that's different is that private companies have to make a profit. Now, at the best thing that a private company can provide you is things at the same cost. May not be the same quality, but the best they've done. And this is proven that when public services are privatized, at best, the best they can achieve is providing things at the same cost. And usually the service level drops and the service gets worse, but it costs you it will certainly cost you the same money. And what will often happen when governments put out an RFP for a project, whatever it is, the lowest bidder gets the job, and then they say, we can't do it, we need more money. This happens all the time, particularly in construction, and it will happen exactly the same in public services. Now, the problem with privatization is that as governments, who are supposed to be answerable to us, the private companies are not answerable to anybody except their owners, whether they have a single owner, a board of directors, or shareholders. However it's organized, they are not democratic by nature. They are authoritarian by nature. So you and I and the government will lose control completely. Because they're private companies, they can say, this is proprietary information, you can't know what it's about. And we've seen this already with the attempts at privatizing the healthcare, when Brian Pallister hiring KPMG, who won't release their data on the survey of Manitoba. So we don't even see what that data is, because lack of transparency, they can do what they like, and we cannot defend ourselves from that kind of thing. And one of the other things as well is that there's a level of inflexibility, is that when, if talking about schools, if there's an influx of people coming into the community, maybe more people have been born several years before, a flood of children coming into the schools, private companies cannot cope with that because they're too busy taking the profit off the top and not investing that money or saving that money to build up or to be able to be flexible enough to cope with changes. And almost always, even in private companies where services have been outsourced to India, for instance, like call centers and so on, everybody tries it because it seems cheaper, but they almost always are pulled back in-house and brought closer to home because of that lack of control and the service level that fails. So privatization is never the answer. It is failing right across the world to provide the level of service that the public sector can do it. So what then will the future hold then for a continued balance of the budget? Well, I'm going to answer that in part 5. And spoilers, it doesn't look good. Little Green Man.